Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our penultimate TLHE lecture. So, how is everybody doing? I finished grading because you would have gotten your results and all of that. So we actually now super close to the end with the last few sessions. So how is everything going on your side? Let's begin with that first. On my side, it's just been crazy busy, so much going on. Looking forward to December now. Needs to come. What about you? How is everything going? Can just put your responses in the chat box. Feel free to be as sharing as you would like. If anybody wants to unmute and just speak, you can do that also. You don't necessarily have to type. There's just a few of us. So if anybody wants to unmute and just speak, that's fine also. Well, hopefully people are still typing their responses and just basically saying how they are. Oh, thank you, Casey Lee. I'm alive but barely. The past few weeks have been busy work-wise. Okay, I can't wait to catch up on some sleep. So December is also calling my name. Last push. Yes, guys. I thought I might get a few minutes of extra sleep this weekend, but then as life happens, something comes up. And the little people have an activity on both Saturday morning and Sunday morning. So, yeah, life always happens. If it's not work, then it's personal. And then if it's not that, like, what was I thinking? I went and registered for this PGDHE qualification, and it is such a lot of work. But my lecturer did at the start of it in TLHEA say to me that before I blink, this year is going to be over. And I don't know, I think it was last week that Bhavna said, the year went by in a whoosh. And I said that is like the perfect word that she used. Because like we very blinked and like I told you, everything seems so overwhelming right now in semester one, and don't know what is this arc and what is this recordings and what is this that I have to do and that assignment, and look at it now. You like at the end of the first year, almost at the end. So I like what Casey Lee said, last push. And it is literally that, just the last push. So guys, yeah, just give it that. And I'm not gonna keep you very, very long this evening. We just have the last bit of content that I want to engage with you on. And then you can go off a bit early and hopefully start working on your part three of your POE, or go and sleep early. And then you can wake up early tomorrow and work on part three of the POE, whatever. It's up to you. Okay, so anybody else, please don't stop if you are typing. Please don't stop typing. Share your ideas. Tell us where you are at, how you are feeling. Yeah, okay. So we're looking at Learning Unit 4 first. which is managing the assessment process. And in our last lecture, we looked at theme 1, which was managing assessment in different roles. And then theme 2 was marking and academic judgment. 3, providing effective feedback. Theme 4 was moderation. And then theme 5 is, I think, the one that resonates the most with me. And it is reflective practice. And I will tell you why I'm always so big on reflective practice. But first, I want you to speak about your experiences of reflective practice. And then I will tell you how my journey with reflective practice. Let me put it that way. I don't want to say anymore. Okay, so 2 questions here quickly. Why is it important for lecturers to critically reflect on their assessment practice? So, not just reflecting on practice in general, but reflecting specifically on assessment practice. And then I especially like the second question here. What questions can you ask to reflect on an assessment task? So let's say, for example, you've compiled an assessment plan, you've designed the assessments for the assessment plan, you've implemented the assessments, and then after the one assessment task, you want to do some reflection on the task. So what are the questions that you will ask yourself when you are reflecting on that task? So I'll give you 8 minutes to answer these 2 because the second one especially requires a little bit of thought. So it's 37 minutes past. If by 45 minutes past 7, you could have please responded in the chat box. Okay, thank you, Diana and Peter. Yes, most definitely. Um, I think the first step is to understand why it's important to critically reflect on your assessment practice. And as Peter said, you have these great ideas and you think, oh, this is so fit for purpose for this content and for these allos. Well, allos first, then content. Um, and you think like, yes, I'm gonna try this, and I've been reading about this great new strategy. Let me try this out. It's worked at so many institutions in Australia, and I really think, it could fit really nicely here. And then when the time comes, one group of students respond so well and perform amazingly, and another group just totally crash. Well, this year they do well, and then next year, the exact same assessment, something goes terribly wrong. So that's why it's important to sit down and reflect on the assessment. And obviously, you need different questions for reflection that's going to help you unpack the effectiveness mostly of the assessment. So there are some good questions here that Diana and Peter provided that I just read through. And I see now Casey Lee has also reflection assesses whether assessments are valid and reliable. Yes, most definitely. You want to reflect also on whether your assessment has met the principles of assessment and to what, sorry, not if, but to what extent it has met the principles of assessment. Very good. And then your questions, does the assessment align with the allos? Are the assessment criteria clear? Does the task represent? Yes. Are the instructions and expectations clear? What learning does it promote? What trends do you notice or common errors? Yes, very good. And then Sunette said the assessment process is ever changing, subject changes, students change, industry evolves. You have to constantly rework and then, of course, reevaluate assessment goals and methods. So, absolutely spot on. Um, so you can decide what questions you are going to ask about the assessment, but ultimately what they need to provide you with when you are reflecting is a strategy for improving the assessment, because ultimately that is what we want to do through reflection, is identification of gaps and then ways to fill those gaps and improve the assessment. So that's ultimately what reflective practice is about. Okay, so moving on, this is just, to help you just unpack the concept of assessment, reflective practice a little bit more. And it is reflective practice more in general, but if you understand reflective practice in the broader sense, then you are going to be able to understand it specifically in terms of assessment. So if you look at this cartoon, it says, I keep thinking about teaching. And I don't know about the rest of you here, but my goodness, it consumes a person. So you're thinking about your students and you're thinking about your practice and you're thinking about assessments all the time. I mean, Peter right now is on his phone, hiding in a corner away from a family event. And then even when you leave the session and go back to join the family event, you'll be speaking to people and so on and so on. But somehow there's still a part of your mind that's thinking about, oh, I tried this today. And it absolutely worked so nicely. At least that's what I think. I wonder how I can find out how my students responded. Or you'll be wondering, like, sure, man, why did they do so badly in this assessment? From the discussion we had, they seemed to have understood everything and, so on and so forth. So those thoughts are constantly consuming you. And that is unfortunately one of the things about being a teacher. So what does this cartoon mean? And obviously, I keep thinking about teaching. It's the reflective practice. And then I've got two questions here that I would like you to answer. Connect the cartoon's message to your own developing identity as a lecturer and the challenges lecturers face. And then the second one, how does the cartoon resonate with your understanding of reflective practice in teaching? So you don't have to do anything too detailed here. Just touch on basically the first question is saying, how do you identify with this cartoon? And then the second one is, what does it tell you about reflective practice, in other words? So maybe just by, it's now 49 minutes. Okay, it just changed. It's like 50 minutes past, maybe by 56 minutes past. If you could post a response to both or either of the questions. But just share your ideas, please. Okay. So 6 minutes, and if you could just share something. Okay. Hey, I don't see any responses coming through. Maybe you're still typing, or maybe it's still going to come through, but that's quite fine. I do understand if everyone's feeling a little bit extra tired tonight. Um, but I think this quotation always resonates quite a bit with me in that John Dewey says, we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. So, oh, sorry, Diana did put something up. For me, the cartoon means that I am continuously trying to improve on my lessons. And also, that means I'm constantly reflecting in the assessments conducted. Absolutely. As teachers, it's that constant process of thinking about what can I do better? What can I do differently? And because of the evolving nature of education, that thought is always going to be at the front of your mind. It's not even at the back of your mind. I see Tamara has her hand up. Do you want to unmute and speak?
Hi, Dr. Naz. Yes. I think, well, I don't know. I can't seem to find the chat box, and that's why I can't comment. So,
Oh, I can
I,
tell you why. It's because you
mm,
joined the session with a guest link.
oh,
So
that's why.
generally when
That's
that
why.
happens, then you have limited functionality and then you won't
That's
see the
because
chat
that's why I
box.
left and I then came back because obviously now I can't comment or I can't see anyone's comments. Okay, that makes sense. I might then go
Okay.
off and go back on my phone, but
No,
then
no, no. Please
is it
just go
fine?
ahead and
Okay.
speak. It's fine. It's actually nice to hear someone else's voice other than my own. I'm sure everyone agrees with me. So go ahead and
Can
speak,
you
yes.
can you go back to one slide if possible?
Yes.
I don't want to go back into your because I see that I can actually even take control, which is also a bit weird with limited functionality as a guest. Should I go back? Oh, there we go.
Um, yes.
Um, I just want to walk away from the side. So I I like what was it Diana that actually commented on is it
Yes,
Diana that commented
yes,
on the
Diana
template?
just said about improving less, continuously trying to improve and constantly reflecting on. Yeah, it was Diana.
Yeah. Which is actually very like relevant specifically even to that cartoon because I had this discussion with one of our learning and development managers today, and I mean because we are doing a higher education qualification, I think what's relevant is your profile of your student is actually different now, so we have to look at evolving. And obviously the changing of like what you mentioned earlier of assessments is also very relevant because what is perspective for one is not perspective for the next one. And that's why clarity is constantly having to be like reiterated, reinforced, um, because, yeah, one person's perspective of something is very different to the next person. So, I mean, that's kind of my thought process around the cartoon.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Does anybody want to unmute and add or anything else that you'd like to offer? That was just so nice and so relevant about what you're saying about different perspectives in education. And what particularly resonates about what you said is that not everything is everyone's cup of tea. So, you might have a bomb of a lesson that's just absolutely amazing, and the majority of your students love everything that you've done, and it all goes so well. And then one student just absolutely didn't connect and didn't enjoy the approach that you took. So it is definitely perspective, and how students perceive things, and then also your perceptions and how you perceive things and your approach and so on. So yes, it all of that does definitely come in. So I was just asking before I keep talking, does anybody else want to say anything, add to what Tamara said, or if you have a completely different idea also, that's fine. Anybody? Okay, no, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so I'm not going to do that. I know, like in that moment, everybody just holds their breath. Like, I hope she's not seeing my name on the screen right now. You know, yeah, I know. Like sometimes even at like not so much now, but like when I first started, attending workshops and conferences and that, and I just be like, please don't pick my name to ask anything. Oh yes, I was speaking about the John Dewey quotes, and I just wanted to share like from my personal experience as a PGCE student. So I had no direction in terms of what I wanted to do when I set out, to study. I started off doing, what was it called, a B-Proc. That was the law degree back in the day, and I'm giving my age totally away here. And then they changed the B-Proc into an LLB, and so I did some of that. And then 5 years into the thing, I realized, sure, no, this is just agonizing. I can't do it anymore. And so I did a BA, and then at the end of the BA, it was like, now what are you going to do? So I said, well, teachers work for only half a day and they have lots of holidays. That's what I thought, hey? That is what I thought. Quite green, you can see. And so I decided to do this PGCE. And one of the things that we had to do, and for anyone here who is in teacher education, I just hope that this is something that you'll try out because it just worked so well for me as a student, and I'm sure for other students in my group. But from day one, we were required to keep a reflective journal. So they gave us a hardcover book and they told us cover it as you like. And of course, being teachers, we all stationery addicts, bought fancy papers and contact paper and so on, covered it all nice, scrapbooked it. And that was our reflective journal. And we just had to reflect on every part of our journey, not just in teaching experience, when you go into the classroom and teach, but even the learning. So at the end of a particular lecture, like a lecturer will just say to you, I want you to take out your journal and write 5 things that you found incredibly useful or incredibly not useful today or whatever. And that's throughout that year, they developed through that journal the skill of reflection. And it's become so ingrained that I find myself reflecting now all the time, and we all know where's the best place to reflect. I'm not going to say it, but when unless you take your phone in there with you, then you're not going to reflect. But leave your phone outside the next time, and you will come out of there with the most amazing lesson plans and assessments, I promise you. So anyway, yes, through that reflection journal, the skill of reflection was developed. And I really think it's such a useful exercise. And as much as we get feedback from students and all stakeholders, your own reflections using all that feedback is what's going to close the loop and improve your practice. Your practice is not going to improve from studying further and getting a master's and then a PhD. The ability to reflect is what's going to strengthen that master's and PhD and your practice. So I want to just leave you with that on reflection. To improve assessments, you have to reflect on the assessments. Okay. So let's move on to postgraduate supervision. You haven't done this as yet. Um, in terms of, sure, that person in the image, their hair is just a bit weird. I don't know what that style actually is. I've never noticed it before till now. It just caught my eye. That is very different. But anyway, okay. So, you're going to experience postgraduate supervision in HETP. And I thus gave it to you as an ICE task so that you can become familiar with what supervision in higher education for research entails. And I'm so glad that with this cohort, meaning you, You actually read the prescribed material first before attempting the ICE task. In the past, when I got, some responses about supervision, it was all sorts of other supervision, but not research. And obviously, this is now specifically research supervision and what research supervision means in the different faculties. So obviously, like I think it was. Oh, was it maths who said it's very practical in, or was it science, in helping students to understand formulas and how to interpret that specific numerical data. And then, of course, humanities, there was also something so nice that group said about, especially in psychology, the need to do, what you might call it, reflective practice in your research, reflexive, what is it called now? Reflexive, it must be reflexive practice in research, where you constantly, as the researcher, check yourself for bias and prejudice to ensure that what you are researching is as much subjective as possible. Objective as possible, sorry. I meant objective as possible. So yes, there were all those really lovely discipline specific ideas that came. And I think education, like now when you're going to embark on um your research journey, then you're going to obviously see the relationship between yourself and supervisor. So it's quite an exciting time. And I know for many people, and this is so off the topic, but I can't help myself here because I'm very passionate about research. For a lot of people, research is very daunting, like, oh, I hate research. What is research? And many people will respond to that and say, yes, I know research is challenging, but. And I say, no, that vocabulary needs to change. We have to stop saying, we know research is challenging, but research is not challenging. It's a process of discovery, and discovery is exciting. So, research is exciting, but that's what we rather should be saying. So, when you start your research journey, I hope those words go clanging around on the inside of your head. Research is exciting, it's a process of discovery. The more you research, the less you know. And for me, that's the most exciting thing because then I'd be like, oh, I read this paper and it's so interesting. Now I know so much about whatever the topic is. Yay, yay, yay. And then as I start exploring the topic for myself from a different perspective, obviously doing something slightly different, it's like, oh no, but that's not all there is to it. It's so multidimensional. And look at this, and look at what this person is saying, and look at that one is saying. But why are they saying this? Why do they disagree with what the first person has said? And then suddenly you're just like, oh my goodness, I'm so confused. And that's the best part of it because that's when I say you need to put it all away and let it all marinate. And then after about 2 or 3 days, then you come back and you'll finish. So don't ever look at it as, oh goodness, I've got to do this whole research report. It really is, and it's so closely, of course, linked to reflective practice because it's research is designed to improve whatever the aspect of what you are researching is. So, for example, if you decide to research, and yeah, I recently did a paper on this, so I'll use this example. Undergraduate students' responses or perceptions or beliefs or experiences of a group work formative assignment. Obviously, now you are looking at that to see what worked, what didn't work, how can it be improved. So you are looking at an area of practice and possibly improving. And that's why research is so wonderful. But okay, so I have two quick questions here, and then we'll be practically done. So, yes, last stretch. And so the first one is list three most important skills you need as a student being supervised. So, as a research student, what are the three most important skills that you need? There is no right or wrong answer. You can say anything here. I'm not going to say, goodness me, what are you thinking? There is no right or wrong answer, whatever you think, okay? And then the next one day you are going to be research supervisors. So when you pull your underpants over your pants and put your cape on, and you become the supervisor, not the supervised, then what three most important skills do you need to be an effective research supervisor? So, firstly, what skills does a student being supervised need? And then, what three skills does a research supervisor need? The most important ones to you. And I'll give you 5 minutes. You can type something. If you don't want to type, you can again raise your hand and you can just speak. Okay. So it's now 12 minutes past. By 17 minutes past, if you could please have posted something. You can answer one or both. That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to unmute and just respond. Sunette, I really like what you said about okay, time management and planning and organizing data filing systems, most definitely. But the whole concept of being open-minded, and that comes two ways. Both the student and the supervisor need to be open-minded. The student in terms of receiving what the supervisor is offering, and then the lecturer, the supervisor in terms of receiving what the student wants to do. Because sometimes we also get, as supervisors, so entrenched in our own practice and our own way of doing things that, we don't want to see other ways. And we immediately block it out and be like, oh no, that's not going to work, but it could very well work. So yeah, it's being open-minded on both sides. And I really like what you said about able to be honest with feedback, because sometimes like supervisors think, oh, if I'm going to say this, I will end up demotivating the student and then they won't want to continue. And I don't want to be bad, but you've just got to be constructive, and you have to just pull off the band-aid sometimes and say it like it is. Like I had one of my students was really, really amazing. Um, but just kept going off on a tangent, like not sticking to the plan. And then, oh, I want to try this. Oh, I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do this. And then we go on this whole rigmarole, and then we end up getting nowhere. So I had to just stop and say, okay, so this is where we started off. And these are some of the things you suggested. Let's map it. Let's see exactly what we're going to do, and this will work and this possibly won't work, and this is why. And so through that process, then we have to take it from there. But if you're just going to be quiet and, oh yes, this is wonderful, you're actually letting the student down. Also about good communication skills and time management. Time management is on both sides. I remember in my PhD waiting 4 months for feedback on a chapter. I was so unhappy. I was so, so unhappy. And then when it came back, it was on the incorrect draft. So lecturers also need to, supervisors also need to have very organized filing systems, because it's so easy to mix up drafts. And that's what happened to me. And it wasted a whole huge amount of time. And there's nothing worse, and you know this from your experience now as a student, to do a piece of work and then have to sit. And I absolutely, this is something that I dislike so much, is sitting and waiting for feedback, waiting to hear how you did. Especially if you've put a lot of effort into the work, and you're keen to see now what happened, what's the outcome, and you're waiting, and nothing is forthcoming for like a very long time. And finally, when it does come, you've even forgotten what you've done. And we spoke about that when we were speaking about time, yes, feedback, and it applies here as well. So, I see Lucy has said time management, set realistic goals. Yes, mutual realistic goals. Very good. Independence along with self-motivation. Research is challenging. Research is not challenging. It is exciting, Lucy. And there will be days you want to give up, most definitely. But through self motivation and perseverance, one can achieve success. Very often I've been asked to speak to research students or at different research, whatever is about, how to approach research or what. Da, 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 da. And one of the first things I always say is, when you pick a research topic, it is like picking a life partner. Pick one that excites you. Otherwise, you're going to get bored and drop it. So, when you are picking a research topic, pick one that you are excited about and passionate about, so that it will sustain you and you will keep at it. Otherwise, like Lucy is saying, you will just want to give up, and you will get bored, and you will say, oh, chuck it, I'm not really going to even bother continuing with this. And that will be the end of it. But if you pick something that you are interested in and that's relevant to what you are currently doing, then you are most likely to complete. And of course, you want to get the degree. Data analysis and interpretation in research. Yes, you need to be knowledgeable of that, and examining data effectively and being able to draw conclusions. Of course. So those are all the skills, most definitely the research specific skills that you need. But yes, perseverance, most definitely, and self-motivation. And your supervisor, on the other hand, also needs to fill that role. Like if you know, as a supervisor, you can see your student is just like not come back to you. You've sent them a draft back, and it's now 3 weeks, and like now what's going on, then you need to like know something can't be, maybe the student is struggling maybe with the research, or maybe personally, or whatever, so you need to check in. And sometimes students just need space to work. So not constantly harassing, where's your chapter? Where's your chapter? Or where's this? Where's this? Where's this? You were meant to send it 2 weeks ago. Like just give them space, and they will produce as they can. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say about research. Are there any questions on reflective practice or postgraduate supervision? You can literally ask anything, even if it's pertaining to your upcoming research. Anything? Or you don't want to think that far ahead just yet. But my suggestion to you is in your year-end break, like start looking at your research topic and start, putting ideas together, because it's really going to help you a lot when you start the process. So don't just leave it for the end of things next year. Any questions? Anything that's not clear? For research, will there be a session or something explaining the process? So what happens, Casey Lee, is you do the research module alongside the research. So you will do a module called HETP, and you will have a lecturer for that module who will lecture you and teach you everything about research. So for example, what is a paradigm? And what are the paradigms? And then your lecturer will unpack the paradigms with you, and then you'll be appointed a supervisor. I don't know if the process is as it was last year, where you pick a supervisor based. So what they did last year was they sent out a booklet with different supervisors, and what their area of specialization is, and then you could pick your supervisor from that booklet. So I don't know if it's going to be the same this year, so don't quote me on that. It could be where you get allocated a supervisor based on a topic. It could go whichever way. Okay, so your lecturer works to develop your understanding of the content related to research, and then your supervisor works one-on-one directly with you to support you with completing your research project. Yeah, it's like that. I think there's two submission points. The one submission point I really can't remember right now, but there's two, so like two small assignments, you can call it. The one will be something like maybe where you'll have to write what your research purpose, aims, research questions, all those things pertaining to the research topic, objectives, whatever. And then the second one, I'm sure, will probably be writing a literature review and methodology, maybe. And then your final submission, of course, is the entire research report, which you work on with your supervisor. So your lecturer doesn't mark anything. It's your supervisor that does all the marking. And then, yes, as per your what you might call this thing, obviously you have a PAS, and you submit as per those PAS dates. Sunette, could you please explain how the POE submission works? Sunette, is this for TLHE in particular that you're asking? POE part 3? Yes, okay. So it's an individual submission, as you would have seen in the recording. So basically, TLHE Part 3, it's only Part 3 that you submit. Part 1 and Part 2 are done. You are going to use the feedback that your group received for Part 1 and Part 2, and that's going to help you now put together Part 3 on your own. So you're going to compile Part 3. I think the first part, what is it now? I can't even remember. We're going to have our session, not not next week, the following week. But I think part one, the first question in part three is that assessment plan, probably, I think. And then the second question is to design an actual assessment, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. It's something like that. But there is a recording available, and that is all you do. So, like with TLHEA, you only do part three, and you independently, individually, on your own, complete and submit part three. Clear? Okay, great. So just before we jump off, sure, I thought we are gonna finish early tonight, but we always get so involved, and I so enjoy these sessions. They're always so engaging. Complete Learning Unit 5, yes, okay. Attend our next QA session, which isn't next week, it's the following week at 7:30. But next week, quite exciting. Some of the, well, not some, but I think one or two groups in question two of the CURS assignment two, where you were analyzing a module. I really liked the suggestion of like, oh, maybe a guest speaker could be, quite a useful strategy. So guess what? I've organized a guest speaker for you for next week for CURS. So we're going to start a little bit early at 7 p.m. I'm going to just type it in the chat box because next week will be at 7 p.m. I actually need to sort all this out in terms of adjusting the times and obviously letting the guest speaker know. Okay, so we're going to start at 7 p.m. with the guest speaker. I'll post an announcement, but I'm just giving you a heads up for your personal planning in case, you have like a family get together or something going on, then you don't have to take your phone and duck in a corner. And yeah, so just to give you the heads up, if you can make it, it will be quite interesting. So we'll have a guest speaker, and then it will be the Q&A summative assignment session. Okay, so we'll start at 7 p.m. and I'm sure the guest speaker will speak for about 30 minutes, maybe till 7:30. And then from 7:30 like onwards, I will just do a QA session. And how that QA session will work is there's no presentation or anything from my side. I will just be there and you will just bring your questions. So you will ask a question, I will respond, we'll discuss if you need to, and then you can leave. You don't have to stay. There will be no presentation or anything like that. And it's going to be the same for the 29th of October for the TLHE Part 3. You will just come in as you have questions and leave as you want to leave. So if you have a question, you'll pop in, you'll ask your question, I'll answer it, any follow-up questions, anything to discuss, whatever, and then you can leave or you can stay to listen to other people's questions or whatever you like. But that's the format that the QA session takes. Just a reminder. So I will see you next week at 7 p.m. I'm going to update the Teams meeting invite so that it will reflect 7 p.m. and I will post all this information in an announcement in the CURS module on ARC. So thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. And then I look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Naz. Bye.
Bye-bye.